This is our daily study of Pirkei Avot, the Mishnah Ethics of the Fathers, in honor of those who have yard site for tonight, which is Shabbos, Friday, the 26th of Tammuz, Friday night that is, and Saturday. Joseph Bormaster, Charlotte Laserwitz, Morris Melnick, Sarah Rabin, and Bertha Whitman. May their memory be for a blessing. A link to the text of the Mishnah will be in the first comment below. We are up to chapter 5, Mishnah 6, and this is the last of the patterns of 10. The first 6 Mishnahs of chapter 5 are all about patterns of 10 in the Torah and in tradition. So, Asara Dvarim Nivru Be'erev Shabbos Bein Hashmashos Ve'eluhein. 10 things were created on Sabbath Eve at twilight, and these are they. So this is appropriate because it's currently all Sabbath Eve approaching, that is, Erev Shabbos approaching Shabbos. So this is talking about the very first Shabbos, right? That God created the world. This is why we have Shabbos. God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. So we believe that a day starts the night before. That's why Shabbat starts on Friday night and ends on Saturday night. We start it at sunset, but don't end it the next night till nightfall because we're not sure when night is. Is it when the sun sets, or is it like an hour later when the stars come out? So we're strict on both ends, and Shabbos ends up being about 25 hours long. Okay, but the point is, before God rested, on that first Friday night, on that very first Shabbos, he crammed in 10 final creations that the Torah itself doesn't say. According to the Torah, the final creation is the human beings, man and woman, Adam and Eve, and that shows that our human dignity, that God saved the best for last. On the 6th day, God created animals in the beginning of the day, and then humans at the end of the day. But then after humans, God sort of crammed in these 10 things. So what are they? Piha aretz, upiha be'er, upiha son. So the first 3 are the mouth of something. The mouth of the earth, the mouth of the well, and the mouth of the donkey. Okay, so let's talk about what this is. The earth swallowed up Korach. We read about this a few weeks ago. The wicked Korach rebelled against Moses in the desert, and God punished him and his faction by opening the earth and swallowing them into the underworld. So the Mishnah is saying that God created that spot on the world that was going to swallow Korach. Centuries later, he created that right before he rested on the 7th day. And you have to ask, what's the point of this tradition? What is it trying to teach? We'll get to that at the end. The mouth of the well, that means the well of Miriam. The Jewish people had water in the desert, the rabbis say, in merit of Miriam, Moshe and Aaron's older sister. And there's this well that just traveled around. And so the mouth of that well, which is just a way of saying, the well of Miriam was created on the very first Shabbos Eve. Okay. And finally, the mouth of the donkey that spoke to Bilam. So we read about this also a couple weeks ago. Bilam is the wicked prophet who was hired by Balak to curse the Jewish people, but instead God put blessings into his mouth, and while he's riding his donkey starts talking to him. So God created the speaking mouth of that donkey before the very first Shabbos. Okay. Again, we'll have to get to what exactly is this teaching. What's the point? V'hakeshet v'haman v'hamateh v'hashamir. And then the next few things. The rainbow, the manna, the staff, and the shamir worm. Okay, so the rainbow. This is saying that, we understand now that a rainbow is, after rain, is a result of natural forces. The Torah says that after the flood of Noah, God showed Noah the rainbow and said, this is the sign that I will never destroy the world again. So some people criticize the Torah and say, well, look how primitive the Torah is. They think that the rainbow was invented by God at that moment, when we really know it's the result of naturalistic forces. This Mishnah sort of addresses that. It says, yeah, the rainbow was really created in the original 6 days of creation at the end. It could be that God just shows it to Noah and it takes on new significance, and now this is the significance of the rainbow. But God created it in the beginning. In particular, the rainbow he would show to Noah was preordained. Then what? The manna that would fall and feed us food from heaven, magical food from heaven, or 40 years of the desert. God created that in the beginning. The staff of Moses was like a magical staff. He could turn it into a snake. He used it to split the sea. So that staff was created from the beginning of time. And finally, the Shamir worm. Well, there was a prime minister of Israel named Yitzchak Shamir, and it sounds like a bad name, the worm, but this is a very powerful worm. So, so what is this about? So these stones that you use to build the temple, the Torah says you cannot cut them with any implement of iron, and a beautiful reason, because implements of iron, like is associated with sword, which is associated with warfare. And the temple in Jerusalem has to be a place of peace. Nothing, no implement of warfare can cut the stone. So the question is, but you need cut stones. You can't build without properly cut stones. So how was that achieved? So tradition tells us that there was this magical little worm called the shamir, whose teeth were so strong that you put the worm in and it could cut stone. What's interesting is I think I read in National Geographic or something. There actually are such worms with incredibly strong teeth that can cut through stone. So for us, that was the shamir worm. Okay, God created that in the beginning of time. And then what do we have? The haktav, the hamichta, the haluchos. Okay, the last three: the letters, the writing, and the tablets. What is that referring to? Well, there's a lot of different opinions. I'll say what I favor. The letters, meaning the Hebrew alphabet, was created in the beginning of time. The writing, maybe that means the particular language in which we write, not just the letters of the alphabet, but what they make in the end. And the tablets of the Ten Commandments, where God created those in the beginning of time. Okay, the Yesh Omrim, and some add more to the list. We said 10, but there's a few other things that others add. Af Hamazikin, Ukvuraso Shel Moshe, Ve'elo Shel Avram Avinu. Some add these three more: harmful spirits, meaning like demons, the burial place of Moses, and the ram of our father Abraham. So what does that mean? So demons are created in the beginning of time. Moses' burial place, meaning God buried Moses himself. He didn't want anyone to know where Moses is buried, lest his grave be turned into an idolatrous shrine. God wants to impart upon us that we only worship God. Even our greatest man who ever lived is just a man. And we don't want to build statues to Moses or go to his grave and worship him like some ancient pagans would do for their leaders. So no one knows where Moses is buried. God created his burial place in the beginning of time. And the ram of Abraham, we read about this on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Abraham is ordered to sacrifice his son Isaac. At the last moment, God says, don't actually do it. And then it says, behold, there was a ram caught in the thicket, and Abraham sacrificed that ram instead. Well, this Mishnah is saying, according to this some say opinion, you shouldn't think it was just a coincidence that the ram happened to be there. God preordained from the beginning of time that this particular ram would appear at that moment. Okay, and then finally, the last one is kind of funny. I always found this funny. The Yesh Omrim af tzvas b'tzvas asuya. And some say also tongs, because they are made with tongs. This is kind of random, that God created the first pair of tongs. Why? Because there's a paradox, there's a chicken egg problem here. Apparently, at least in the ancient world, you can only make a pair of tongs with a pair of tongs, because you have to reach into the furnace where the tongs are being made with tongs to get the tongs out. I always find this kind of humorous. So how did the first pair of tongs get made if you didn't have a pair of tongs? I don't know. I thought maybe you use a stick or you improvise, or someone took one for the team and stuck his hands in and got burned. But this is saying, no, God created the first pair of tongs. Very thoughtful of God in the beginning of time so that we can make other tongs. That's kind of funny. Um, but it's also kind of brilliant insight. So let's go back to what is the Kahati says, what is this teaching us? Based on Rambam and Meiri, he says the following, or this is my paraphrase of what they say. This is just this Mishnah is just expressing divine providence, so that everything that happens is for a purpose and a reason. And so you shouldn't think, for example, that when the earth swallowed up Korach, that God is like us, that he's someone who improvises, and he decided at that moment, oh, I'm going to have the earth swallow up. But God foresees everything from the beginning, and it was preordained that it was going to be that way. So too, like the ram of Abraham is like a moment of destiny. It's not like a nice coincidence the ram happened to be there. God preordained that. The burial place of Moses, that gives honor to Moses. Why are demons mentioned? Because demons are just created by God too. We're monotheists. They don't have their own power. God created the evil inclination to challenge us and therefore make us better. There's an explanation for all of these, but to the extent there's all patterns of 10, just so you can remember them, it's just showing 10 important things in the Torah that you might have thought God spontaneously sort of came up with based on circumstance. And it's really saying, no, that's not how divine providence works. It was always part of his plan. And then you can say, well, how does that relate to free choice? If God knew that Korach would rebel, and doesn't Korach have free choice? And we don't have time to get into that. I think we've mentioned it before, but there is free choice, and yet God still foresees things, and it's just kind of a paradox that we don't understand. Okay, with that, we'll say the prayer following the study of Mishnah. Ana Adonai malei rachmim asher b'yocha nefesh kol chai v'ruach kol basar ish. Yen al ratzon lefanecha torasenu tfiloseinu ba'avor nishmos kol ha'askaros shel halayla. U'gemolna mehem b'chastak l'gadol liftoch lehem shari rachmim l'chesed v'shari gan eden. U'skabelos am ba'avo v'chibo shlach lehem malachecha kedoshim b'tahorim l'alifam l'shivim tachas eitzachayim. Eitzon lishmos hatzadikim hatzidkanios chasidim b'chasidos lehanos miziv shchinoscha. L'asbiya mituvcha atzafim latzadikim. V'aguf yanuach b'kever b'menucha nechona b'chedva v'simcha v'shalom. Kedosiv yavo shalom yanuchal mishkvosam halech nechochel. U'chsiv yalzu chasidim b'chavod yoranu mishkvosam. U'chsivim tishkav l'sivchad v'shachafta v'arva shnasecha. And in English, please, O Hashem, full of mercy, for in your hand is the soul of all the living and the spirit of every human being. May you find favor in our Torah study and prayer. For the souls of Joseph Bohrmaster, Charlotte Lazerwitz, Morris Melnick, Sarah Rabin, and Bertha Whitman, in whose memory we study and pray, accept them with love and affection, and send them your holy and pure angels to lead to settle under the tree of life, near the souls of the righteous and devout, to enjoy the radiance of your presence, to satiate them from your good that is concealed for the righteous. May the body repose in the grave with proper contentment, pleasure, gladness, and peace. As it is written, let him enter in peace, let them rest on their beds, everyone who has lived in his proper way. As it is written, let the devout exult in glory, let them sing joyously upon their beds. As it is written, if you lay down, you will not fear. When you lay down, your sleep will be sweet. Amen.